All right. Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Empire interview. I'm very excited about this one. We've been talking about Midnight a lot on the channel, and there's a lot of different technical reasons why I'm excited about it. So, we're going to have a great conversation here and find out more about it. So, let's go ahead and get into it. Thank you for joining me. So, for everybody out there, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. Um, right?
I'm Mauricio. I've been acting as the head of product for Midnight for the last 18 months. Before that, I consulted for banks, fintechs, and regulators on crypto adoption strategy for a couple of years. Before that, I spent 20 years plus in the financial services industry down in Brazil and Latin America, working with a variety of large banks in financial institutions, including regulators, mostly in the digital and data transformation arena. I served as chief data officer a couple of times for local banks in Brazil. But I've been in crypto since 2014 when I first ran into the Bitcoin white paper. My current life's purpose is to get Midnight to mainnet.
That's exciting. And I know that there's a lot of work to be done there because I've been playing around with not actually physically doing the development side, but I've been a part of development cycles. And it's definitely a lot more than you ever imagine ahead of time, right? Whenever you're starting something, they're like, here's the scope, this is what we're building, this is what we expect to be built. It'll take X amount of time. And it never takes X amount of time, but you always learn throughout the process. A lot of fun. So tell me a little bit about your life before crypto, right? You said that you came into crypto around 2014, so that's pretty early for most people. What was your kind of like the direction and trajectory that you were going before that moment, right? Because oftentimes there's kind of like a branch off.
Yeah, well, running into the Bitcoin white paper wasn't the shedding of waters or the fork on the road that you would expect. I was in financial services. Bitcoin at the time sounded like a new asset class for most people, but because I had a background in data, I was more interested about what that technology would allow us to do with data in financial services. Right after that, I found out about Ethereum, about programmable money, and how the data and the dApps and all of that. So I just kept studying. I was not a trader, so I didn't break into the scene by trading Bitcoin early, like some centralized exchange founders are very known about doing. But I just kept digging into what the art of the possible was. At the time, I was working on a bank that was undergoing a deferred prosecution agreement with the Department of Justice of the United States, which shall remain unnamed. And that bank didn't really, they were not interested in the technology, and they were scared of Bitcoin, as many people for a very long time. Right after that, I found myself working for IBM. And within a couple of years, they moved into the enterprise blockchain space, and I got very lucky to be the first person to run their services business for blockchain consulting in Latin America. And from that point on, I never stopped working with blockchain related endeavors, whether as my main gig, like at IBM, or as a side gig, like a number of startups that I've advised over the years. Most notably Tune Traders, which is a decentralized music protocol. So yeah, in over the years, I went back and forth between having a main gig with blockchain, having a main gig in banking, and ultimately in 2021, I was offered a job in London, for which I moved to London from Brazil to do consulting for banks, fintechs, and regulators on blockchain and crypto adoption, which then evolved into an opportunity to step in as head of product for Midnight in the middle of 23. So ever since, I've been doing this as my main job. I have a side gig as a podcast host, so this is not completely unfamiliar, where I do weekly digest on use cases, which to me is the best way to learn about what blockchain can do, is to investigate what the use cases are. And we also have a interview segment that goes out every Tuesday with builders in the space, just to learn who they are, maybe trace a profile of who these people that are rebuilding or building this new internet, what they're doing. So yeah, before coming into crypto, I was heavy into data governance, data quality, all the chief data officer types of disciplines from that era, and that's why I felt that the blockchains were so powerful, is because they just organize data on the internet better. They give you, provable ownership of the data that's on the internet. They give transparency and traceability, among other things. And that made the life of a chief data officer somewhat kind of obvious and easier. So to me, those were large opportunities that, if you look into the landscape to this day, are still somewhat untapped, but this is improving dramatically with the discussions around RWA, the tokenization of real world assets. I feel very fortunate of having run into Bitcoin so early, and then just having the opportunity to have made a career out of this.
Yeah, that is an amazing, I think, story, and I like the journey you took there. For me personally, right, I think that the hardest thing for people on the outside is to get into crypto when you're not already in there, right? Or there's not some path that from where you've started that gets you in there. But a lot of these people that have kind of broken out, there's like a shift, right? They've done all this work in some other unrelated field, and then they figure out how to make blockchain related to that field, and then they're able to specialize and do something really cool. And I love it. I actually found Midnight through learning about and figuring out what fully homomorphic encryption was. And I always talk about this because I think that it's like one of those like really kind of crazy concepts that requires a whole lot of encryption stuff that I don't know a whole lot about. But basically, I was trying to create a software solution, or imagine a software solution for a high tech medical device, right, that is used to treat cancer. I was working for a company that created this machine. Basically, when somebody gets cancer treatments, there are multiple treatments. But this machine had a like special physics ability that is in clinical trials to make all those treatments into one treatment. And so one of the things I saw were that there were multiple research outlets that were doing human testing, human trials with this technology, but each one was limited to like 100 to 200 people, and then they don't share information within themselves. So I was like, well, if we had a software level with fully homomorphic encryption so that the privacy of the patient is preserved, but the data can be shared among the 5 different outlets, then now you have 2,000 data points instead of, just a couple, or 1,000 data points as opposed to just 100, couple hundred. And so then I learned about Midnight, and I was like, well, with Midnight, where you have 2 different levels kind of the way that data is messaged, either public and private, you're able to you basically make the fully homomorphic encryption part redundant. You don't actually need all of that crazy complex computation and all of the weight of all of that. You can just deem certain sides of information either one or the other. So you can maintain that privacy, is my understanding.
Yeah, I think the entirety of the space in zero knowledge proofs are it's evolving so fast, and I think again as someone who's passionate about technology and see in use cases the ability to express the reasons why these technologies are valuable. I think health in general, but health research and in life sciences, I think because of the sensitivity of the actual data, they will greatly benefit from what we call the privacy enhancing technologies, which are coming about out of research now. So zero knowledge proofs are one field. FHE, the fully homomorphic encryption, are other technologies or techniques. You have trusted execution environments, which are also part of this landscape. And soon enough, we'll be talking about quantum cryptography in the privacy enhancing technology field as well. So absolutely, I think use cases are the things that not only prove that these technologies are useful, but also make them real for whoever is not particularly excited about these technologies, as long as they actually resolve a particular complicated problem in ways that were previously impossible. I think that's where the value is.
I'm super excited about what's going on here. Tell me a little bit about, or I guess give me a high level explanation of Midnight and how they are solving the privacy problem for people that may not be as deep into it, I think, as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Midnight is a blockchain, as many blockchains there are out there. It is being launched as a partner chain to Cardano. Cardano, one of the more or most stable blockchains from the previous generation. And it is a partner chain because we share the validators, or in the case of Cardano, they're called the ASPOs, the stake pool operators. So that's where we inherit Cardano's security into Midnight's blockchain. But in the programmability space of Midnight, there is an architecture inspired by the Kachina paper, which is a smart contract architecture that allows you to separate and still operate in the same smart contract public and private states of the information. And you do so by separating the private state off chain on your device and the public private state on the blockchain using zero knowledge proofs. So the separation, in a sense, is you can have all your data on your device, but then you send proofs about your data when you interact with the applications that are running on the blockchain, which then make it possible for you to actually resolve business use cases by not sharing the data, but only the proof about the data. It's a very interesting construct, and it yields a lot of these unique use cases, such as the ones you were referring to, where now I don't have to send my data over the internet or record my data, which could be very sensitive data, things about my health, for instance. I can share proofs that are mathematically provable about the data that I have and send it over the internet, send it over to a blockchain, get it recorded immutably forever into a particular block, and have a smart contract make decisions about that particular information in the context of the business that it's supposed to operate without ever having to share my data. And that's why we say send proof, not data, is pretty much what Kachina enables you to do, which is this smart contract framework. Um, there will be, as we evolve with the roadmap towards mainnet, there will be both shielded transactions, as I just described, but also unshielded transactions as any other blockchain. So you can actually, as a builder, decide how much of the data you're making private, how much of the data you're making public, and it will all depend on your particular use case. So that's as flexible as you can be in terms of preserving privacy in the context of public blockchains.
I love that. And that was very well said. I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people why that would be important, because you don't want all of your information public for everyone all the time, which is currently what it is on the blockchain, or the majority of blockchains that don't have a privacy solution there, right?
Or the internet itself, right? If you think about how social media monetizes your data and you get nothing from it, you get maybe a service from that particular service, but ultimately your data is the product, not the service you're using, right? So that's where I think blockchains, and particularly in this case Midnight, will enable a different way for us to actually address data ownership in Web 3 and obviously in Web 2 as well. So there is a different way of understanding ownership, because if you remember in the crazy season of the NFTs a couple of years ago, there was this joke about, oh, I can't see your NFT, I'm going to right click and save your monkey picture or punk picture or whatever animal you choose to pixelate that week. And people joked about that. So you own an NFT, but I can use your image. When you're not sharing the data, but you're sharing the information about the data, it's really hard for someone to say that they have access to the corresponding data, because they don't. Unless you selectively disclose what you need or what you want from your data, there's no way people will have access to it. So yes, you can prove ownership of an asset on the blockchain in a public chain these days, but the fact that the data is and the metadata is readily available kind of puts a dent to the entire ownership, because Web 2 doesn't care if it's provable yours or not. Um,
Yeah.
and it's easy to kind of go and capture that. But with constructs like zero knowledge proofs, you can actually say, well, yeah, you have access to the proofs, but you don't have access to the data. Therefore, I can mathematically, cryptographically prove that I own this. You don't.
So going back to your background kind of in the fintech world, and like the traditional financial industry, like, to me, that kind of, thinking about this, I see kind of a future where all of your financial transactions could be private, but you could still get taxed accordingly, right? Like, you could prove that X amount is how much that you have, to pay in taxes, without having to have all of your personal, private, potential financial information. Like, even in an audit, they could just kind of like plug in and then be like, oh, yep, it's right, and then continue. Is that like possible? Is that kind of like,
This is a potential scenario, I think. um, and I also think that, especially when it comes to tax regulations or tax authority, in the current setup of things, I don't think that there is a presumption of privacy with them. They will want to see the underlying data, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that everyone needs to see that data. So you
Yeah.
can selectively disclose to whomever that counterpart is, however much data they need to proceed with their activities. Is there a scenario in which they would be satisfied with just having access to the proofs that would make it necessary? Potentially, but that doesn't mean that your data will navigate through the internet all the time you have to interact with an application somewhere, right? So I think it is very nuanced, and the fact that it can be selectively disclosed is an important feature, in the sense that, no, a tax use case is one use case, but the data set that you interact with to say do your own financial transactions is the very same, but they're different use cases with the same data set. So for each use case with the same data set, you might want to have different levels of access to that same data set, which is where I think things will end up. It's also complicated to discuss this, in the sense that tax regulators are very much centralized
Hmm.
and the blockchains are very much decentralized. So it will probably reside with the dApp builders, the builders of the applications on the blockchain, to actually comply to specific tax or any other jurisdictional regulations they are subject to. A blockchain can't comply with every regulation in the world, but it can enable builders to do so. And that's where we're shooting for with Midnight.
That's exciting. With Midnight's development coming pretty quickly along, when is Midnight Mainnet projected to come out?
I would love to be able to predict that, but I can't. And
No.
and I have hopes that I'm unable to share.
Okay.
This is the year for a Midnight Mainnet, and that I have that in my mind. When specifically we're launching the Genesis block, it's still TBD. There's a lot of building, as you mentioned. There's a lot of testing that we want to make sure that we are able to do. We are looking to do this and launch this year, and I would I don't want to rush anything I don't have to.
Yeah.
As a product person, obviously my goal is to reach product market fit with the minimum amount of features, but we're also building something that no one has ever built. So it comes with its own challenges. So we're trying to strike the good balance there.
Okay. No, that was a good politically correct answer, and I wasn't trying to like hammer you down to any specific thing because I know how it is. I personally have been in some back end conversations, and so I've gotten some different time frames. Right. So 6 months ago is not the same as 2 months ago. Is not the same as today, I imagine. But that's the way that it is in this development.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we launched a private beta version in the end of 23. We launched a public beta version in the beginning of 24, and we've been evolving that same system up to the launch of the testnet in October of 24. I've seen roadmaps of other quote unquote competing chains that took 4 or 5 years from the day they launched their first testnet. I don't think we're going to see this for Midnight for sure. But also, we are giving ourselves enough time with the community. We have, I think, 3,000 people on our Discord. We have building partners that are building applications or porting applications from other chains onto Midnight. And all that feedback is tremendously valuable for us building, because we build for builders, and they are the most important persona which we cater to. And the more they use the system in this pre-launch era, the more feedback we get, the better it looks when we launch mainnet. So it's a very product/user oriented approach, and more and more we want to be human centric as we develop these features, and it's important that we do so. We gather great feedback from the community. We're very thankful, and we'll gradually respond to that as features get released or upgraded until we launch mainnet, because we want to do it right by the community as well. We were very fortunate to have it early on. And we do have this kind of unfair advantage of having the Cardano community next to us, because we're a partner chain to Cardano. And it's definitely something that other blockchains launching in other ecosystems might be alone by themselves. Midnight isn't, and we're very fortunate for that.
Yeah, I think that is a super good point as well, and that was going to lead to my next question. Is I know that Midnight is being kind of built with or alongside Cardano, right? So there is some a great benefit there. What are some of the other chains that are the most related that you see first kind of integrations, like the earlier integrations being with? I know that some of these other chains are a little similar, a little more similar to Midnight than they are Cardano, right? But I was just curious. I've seen in the Discord some people that are very interested in the XRPL. Of course, I think that there's a lot of like that's very warranted, right? That chain has clearly defined, I believe, its use case, and there are more use cases growing on the XRPL. But then there's some other things like Polkadot, which I've seen a little bit of some relationship there. I have some personal feelings about the founder. So on this channel, we don't talk too much about it, but I'm going to mention it a little bit there. But what are some of these other chains that are likely going to work with Midnight or be able to enable Midnight first?
So I think the home chain is Cardano, and the home community is Cardano, and that's not changing. Um, as with in the current state of interoperability, Midnight will likely have bridges for other chains, so you can move assets back and forth, and that's something that is kind of industry standard at the moment. So we are working with partners that operate bridges, so we can actually extend their presence and Midnight's presence, vice versa, as these things get integrated. But you probably seen Charles talk about hybrid dApps in some of his videos. And this is something that to me is super exciting because the promise of interoperability for now has been delivered by bridges, and bridges require you to get your assets from one chain to another so you can actually benefit from an application on other chains. The concept of hybrid dApps is that a smart contract in a blockchain will be able to interact with smart contracts on other chains. And that wouldn't require you to move your assets from chain to chain, which one reduces greatly the risk of interoperating across chains, but also creates an infinity of possibilities of use cases that are currently not possible. You might want to benefit from the stability of Cardano, but if you're trying to do something that is more scalable, you're going to have to do somewhere else. If you're trying to tap into Midnight's privacy capability and you're doing something on Ethereum, for instance, how does that work? But in the world of hybrid dApps, the smart contracts are observing one another and interacting with one another without forcing the user to move the assets around. So that vision that Charles has been talking about for quite a while now, we are going to pursue for Midnight as well. And ultimately, any chain or any builder on any chain would be able to benefit from Midnight's privacy preserving capabilities in their own ecosystem. Added to that, there is a vision for multi-chain resources. This is something that it was the first time I heard Charles say this was before even I joined Midnight. There is a paper from IO, the researchers there, written called Minotaur. And Minotaur prescribes a mechanism to allow a blockchain to have block producers from other chains, mixing proof of stake with proof of work and other Sybil resistance mechanisms. That is another way for you to actually retrofit between one ecosystem and another. And all of these developments will come into play in the Cardano ecosystem, and Midnight will definitely tap into those things. So this is a longer term play that we are looking into the future. But this is what excites me the most, is that we're building something that's very unique, and then we'll be able to benefit from all that research going forward. So yeah, we're pretty excited about all these things.
Where are you located? This is a good question.
Personally, I'm in London. I live in West London.
Okay, so yeah, I'm currently in Honduras. So this has been a challenge every so often with the internet and stuff. But I love that answer, and I'm very excited about the idea of hybrid apps. I think that that is going to be kind of like the holy grail of what everybody is looking for. And having multi-chain resources, then you're not having to one bridge. You're also not necessarily needing to own just a specific asset and then being stuck on just like a chain to do only specific things. Do you see that do you see Midnight integration happening with um something like Bitcoin through like the Bitcoin OS kind of framework that is using Midgard from Anastasia Labs as a way of doing that? as well.
So full disclaimer, I haven't done a lot of research on the Bitcoin OS. I understand a little bit what they're trying to do. I think the concept of hybrid dApps will prevent the need from locking tokens. That's because that's similar to a bridge in functioning. So I don't expect the architecture of hybrid dApps to force you to do that. Maybe as an interim step, but ultimately that's not, I think, the design that we're pursuing. But yeah, absolutely. I think Bitcoin as a store of value has proven its value. It's been a thriving layer 2 ecosystem in the last 12, 18 months. I'm not a Bitcoin researcher, but I cover a lot of these use cases on the show on Block Drops. And I think that there's a lot of liquidity there that is just, again, the way we built the blockchain ecosystem in general is rather isolated. And every time you have to move tokens around, it's less of an incentive for you to do so. If we can fix that interoperability and the corresponding fragmentation of liquidity, there will be a lot more to be done in terms of how applications and use cases are built by tapping into the best of the best each blockchain can offer. And you don't have to be captive to a particular ecosystem anymore. And ultimately, that yields better solutions for users and a better developer experience for developers. So, yeah, I would definitely hope that Bitcoin would be one. Why not Ethereum? Why not Polkadot? Why not the Cosmos ecosystem? And I think ultimately this will be both a combination of where developers are willing to build and where users are willing to use those apps. It's more of a future guessing exercise at this stage. But the good thing is that we have the R&D team at IO working on that space as well. So, yeah, everything you heard Charles say in the last 2 years, I think there is a portion of it happening somewhere in the ecosystem as we progress. Ultimately, when Midnight launches and we have contributing developers from all over the ecosystem, I think we'll be able to see increasingly more apps and more features coming into play. And ultimately, Midnight can't be this. If I need to resolve privacy matters on a particular use case, I can tap into Midnight whenever that is needed, and it makes it even easier for people to build. So, yeah, this is the longer term vision. We're not there yet, but we're working towards this.
Yeah, something else that I see that has me really excited is like I think about like Atala Prism and Identis. So Atala Prism and Identis are a decentralized identity solution. Just some groups that at different points were working on a decentralized identity solution, or did. To me, I see Midnight being an excellent place for something like that to exist, and for things like your driver's license, your passport, and stuff like that to be on chain, but also have the provable proofs. So, like, I can prove that my visa is valid for traveling to X country when I'm booking a ticket, right? Or that I can prove my age is above 21 without giving my exact age and my home address, right? I see Midnight working very well for those kinds of things. You mentioned that there is a lot of institutional use cases. And to me, I see that as being one of them. What are some of the use cases that you are the most excited about in general for Midnight that you think might be the most game changing?
Yeah, it's funny you say this. I think the enterprise world is ripe with opportunities for data protection, data privacy. Most companies are subject to laws that are similar to the GDPR in Europe, or the LGDP, which is the similar in Brazil, or HIPAA in the US for healthcare. Like there are data privacy and data protection regulations all over the world, which enterprises are subject to. And I think there is a plethora of use cases there. But one thing that is very curious to me is the amount of people building games in the current environment on Midnight. So much that we're in the middle of a virtual hackathon for a Sea Battle Challenge, which is a game. And yeah, it's impressive that, the creativity of developers will take capabilities to levels that we haven't foreseen. So to me, it's very exciting to see the game developer community leveraging these features for their own game mechanics. Um, and I wasn't expecting that. As a former, financial services guy, I was like, okay, proof for reserves might be the first thing we'll see. Maybe, risk portfolio management, where you show the risk without having to disclose the underlying portfolio. I was 1,000% like, yeah, the TradFi DeFi space will definitely come up, and as they did. But it was surprising to me to see game developers actually embrace the tech, and which kind of forced me to go back and revisit my gaming roots and get excited about video games again. I haven't played seriously in years, but I would love to see more of that across crypto. I feel that that's probably true to other ecosystems as well. So hopefully we'll see more of that, because it's really exciting, and it's super fun.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of talking to Michael Yagi. I'm not sure if you know him, but he's building a game called Ascent Rivals, which Ascent Rivals has been kind of a cool pod racer game. And one of the mechanisms that they talked about that could actually use Midnight was their like auction service, like the way that they would do an auction, right? So it'd be like a private auction, basically. As well as they have some really cool things that they're working on. And I don't know, I feel like people know, I hope I'm not divulging secrets, but they have some pretty interesting betting mechanisms that allow a player to put like a bounty on like one of the lead racers. So if you are a spectator, you can actually bet on the outcome, but you can also put bounties on the ones you don't want to win, right? So that people playing the game can there are little games inside of the game. So like there's more than just, betting on a horse and hoping it wins. You have a more active participation, which I think that that's really cool. You mentioned some games or that you're gaming past. What are some games that you like? And what are some things you think can be improved through Midnight in the gaming world?
I'm not a game developer, so I'm gonna pass on the second question because I have no idea how these things come about. My favorite game of all time is Red Dead Redemption,
It's a good one.
and I had the most fun playing it when it came out. Red Dead Redemption 2, Red Dead Redemption 1 is a little bit iffy. Hopefully they'll rebuild with the new engine at some point. But yeah, Red Dead Redemption, the adventure style games are usually the ones that capture my attention most. I got started early with Zelda, the first
Yep.
Zelda um, issue. I played a couple of the subsequent versions. I haven't played any of the newer versions because I just don't have the time. So the last one I played until the end was Red Dead Redemption, and I had the most fun doing it. I'm not big on side quests, not gonna lie. I actually hated that when I finished, I didn't hit 100%, and I had to go back and do side gigs, side quests. And I'm like, oh, I don't have time for this. I didn't have the incentive to continue, so I think I stopped like 82 or 89% or something, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm done. But playing the game was utmost fun. I shared that with one of my older son is a gamer, and I was it was a lot of fun sharing that time with him.
Yeah, I loved Red Dead Redemption. I think that was one of my favorite games, and I think that there is even a like zombie like expansion pack that is kind of like just like a slight twist on the whole main story, which is kind of cool. I did that. I enjoyed that game quite a bit. Um, that's a good one. So there are two questions that I ask everybody that I really don't have much to do with crypto. So I think that they're some of the easiest ones, sometimes the hardest ones. But for you personally, when you sit down and you kind of like start doom scrolling on Netflix, or like you're deciding what movie you're going to watch or show, what are the characteristics or the things that you look for that then make you decide, yeah, that's what I want to watch? Um,
Right. Oh, okay. To me, is the easiest thing for me to watch is The Office, US version. It's my favorite show of all time. Every time I have, a little bit of time, I'll go back to it. Doesn't matter. Really, it's my first pick. Now, with newer shows, I take a lot of hints from my family, my wife, my daughter, and my son. They're, eager viewers, and they have opinions. And the last one I actually spent time in. I pretty much binge watched the entire thing. In during the holiday time off, was Tad Lasso, which was one that many of my friends were like, "You have to watch this. You live close to Richmond, you should be watching this." And I'm like, "Nah, that's I'm Brazilian, but I grew up on the Japanese side of my family. We played baseball. We didn't play football at all, so I don't have any particular passion about football. I love sports, but I really don't pay attention to football." But it was a great show, and maybe somewhat about football, but more importantly about how we relate to other human beings. So it was yeah, it was very surprising to me that the show was that good. Probably in my top 10 of all time at the moment. But yeah, nothing beats The Office in my mind. Even the stuff that people say, "Well, this kind of didn't age well." Yeah, but it's a point in time. You have to acknowledge that that was how
yeah.
things transpired at that point in time. So important reminder that we evolve as well. But it's always fun.
Yeah, there definitely have been times where I've said some things and then I go back to specify, but I mean it in the 2000s sense of that term, right? So I'm not actually trying to be offensive, not in the 2024, like can be awful, like
Absolutely
hurts
not. Yeah.
feelings, you know? And I always jump back to kind of like Charlie's Angels, right? Charlie's Angels was like one of the most like out there kind of really edgy, sort of like very, very vulgar, like silly, funny, um, like movie. It was like one of the most outrageous. And that was like that early 2000s time period when everybody was just kind of like figuring out where the limits were. But 100%. A show that I'm going to recommend for you because I like The Office. I think The Office is good, and I stumbled across this show called Dury Girls. Okay, Dury
Okay.
Girls follows like a group of like five kids, and I believe that they're like Scottish, something like that, in just like some small town, and it's
I'll
kind
need
of like
subtitles then.
well, no, no, no. Well, maybe, but maybe, but it's English. But it's so funny. They kind of like always get themselves into trouble, and then they need their parents to bail them out, and then their parents always make it worse. So it's like a funny type, silly funny thing. Highly recommend. Really enjoyed it. But then the last question, which I always ask everybody, is if you can go anywhere in the world and you can go to multiple parts of the world for different parts of your meal, what are you eating
Ooh.
and where? Right? That's a tough one for me, but I'm one of those people that I live to eat. So food is kind of like,
Relatable.
yeah,
Relatable. Oh man, I think being born and raised Brazilian, we got very lucky, especially because we grew up in São Paulo, which is kind of very um, cosmopolitan area in Brazil. So we've had access to a lot of different cuisines. But I don't think we can beat the rice and beans and a steak with a um, with an egg on top, like fried egg, sunny side up kind of thing, and a couple fries, and it's kind of those comfort foods for us Brazilians. So I think, yeah, I can't, yeah, but I love fish and chips. I've been here for in the UK for 2.5 years. Every time I have the opportunity to go to a pub, if it's the first time in the pub, I'll get fish and chips just to see how good they are or how bad they are. So fish and chips is definitely some my go-to here in the UK when I'm eating out. But big burger fan, big steak fan. Yeah, um, definitely not a peak eater at all. Yeah,
Same.
so yeah, absolutely. We'll try everything at least once to see, if it warrants a second go around. But yeah, go to is rice and beans, a steak, maybe an egg, and maybe a salad on the side. But yeah, it's very easy.
I love that. And that was a great answer. I appreciate this conversation. This was a super good one. And I've definitely learned a lot more about Midnight and kind of the direction that you all are trying to go with that. And I'm excited to see what the future holds. And what are your kind of like final thoughts and things that you're excited about in this space? Also, if there are some builders in the space that you look up to, outside of Charles, right? Let me know who those people
that's
are because I'm
that's
trying to talk
unfair.
to somebody.
We have great partners in the ecosystem. I've been seeing a lot from the guys in Paima, Sebastian and the team, Sunday Swap, Anastasia Labs. Even at IO we have the guys in Lace, the guys in Blockfrost. We're very fortunate to work with what could be probably the top minds in crypto. I really like work that some of the folks in the Cardano ecosystem are doing. Um, Patrick Tobler from NMaker in the NFT space as well. So these are all partners we're happy to work with and bring whatever they built elsewhere onto Midnight. And this is something that we've been announcing consistently now for the last 3-4 months, and hoping to see more of them in this particular space. Shout out to the folks at Tune Traders building the decentralized music protocol. These are my long-term friends, and I'm super excited for them as well. So yeah, I would encourage people to also go and listen to the back catalog of the Block Talks interview on the Block Drops podcast. I've had multiple people there that I'm super thankful for them to, taking just a smidge of time to come and talk to me about who they are and what they do with blockchain. So definitely a interesting listen if you guys care. But yeah, I think that's it. I think we'll see a lot of overlap between artificial intelligence and crypto in the coming months. What we do with it is what will determine whether we have a place in the tech space or we're just here for the speculation and moving tokens around. I think AI does need blockchain more than blockchain needs AI. So we should be always revisiting our ethos in the sense of the decentralization and accruing value at the edges. And hopefully the AI agents will allow that to continue to be true. So I'll probably be paying a lot of attention in that space.
I really like the idea of that, kind of how you described Midnight allowing you for your data to stay on your device and not actually be exchanged over the internet or shared, right? And there's that separation. For me, the connection to AIs, when we've seen these things like World or what World Token, I can't think about it right now. I can't the one from Sam Altman, that makes you,
WorldCoin.
yeah, WorldCoin. Okay, there we go. So WorldCoin, and then some of these other things, we've seen these privacy issues come up with that, and even Gemini, Google Gemini, and some of these things where the information was actually being used, and that they were sharing the data. And so I think that Midnight would be a way that people can have their personal AI agent with all of their custom information, all of their modifications, all of the personality that they've given their AI, without that being public for everybody, right? And I kind of like, that's one of the places where I see
Yeah,
it, as well as
I like that use case for sure.
yeah, as well as AI for medical data interpretation. So, like, if I go and I get my blood tests, I could maybe snap a picture um, on my phone, and then it'd be like, oh, well, you're outside of the average range with your cholesterol, but you're inside of the average range with your weight and height. So maybe you need these things for to fix that in your diet, right? So, like, those kinds of things are things that I'm excited about that I see coming out here very soon. But thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate this. This has been awesome, and I'm excited to have you back on, though, whenever Midnight Mainnet launches, so I can get all of the details and your feelings on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to return whenever it's appropriate. And in the meantime, if you guys want to know more about Midnight, we have docs.midnight.network, which is our documentation page. There's a link there to our Discord as well, where the developer relations team will be hanging around, working with the teams in the hackathons and supporting the community with questions. So absolutely, we're in touch with the community. My good friend Ben O'Hallen says that you can't fork community, which I love that quote. So yeah, absolutely. Just join us there and get on with your midnight journey. There's a lot more to come this year, and we're super excited to be shipping more features as we ramp up to mainnet. So yeah, it'll be a pleasure.
All right, everybody. You heard the man. I've got all of the description, all of the links in the description. Make sure that you give them a follow and that you're paying attention to everything that they're putting out. I've seen some of their content and I love it. The use cases for blockchain, I think, are pretty limitless. So I'm excited to see how this space grows and how things go in the future. Midnight is one that I'm really excited about. And trying to figure out how many ways that I can implement it into things that I want to do going forward in the future. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and do all the things. It costs you nothing, but it helps us get the word out about what we got going on here. So thank you, guys. And thank you so much, Mauricio.
Thank you.